Alright, hello everybody. Welcome back to Setuju Tak Setuju. Sorry, kena ikut Haziq lah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. Yalah, kita don't have Haziq today, unfortunately. But it's okay. He has some personal issues to actually settle, but it's alright. So moving on, kita punya penaja today is none other than our dear FAATHIMAHFAKHRUDDINPROPERTIES. Correct.
Yes.
So in whichever ways korang perlukan any questions that you have to ask about property atau nak beli jual rumah lah, nak beli flat lah, nak beli kondo, nak beli mansion lah, nak beli apa.
Mention boleh mention.
Mention boleh?
Boleh. Cari.
Okay, so korang boleh cari Fatimah lah. But something you must also understand that Fatimah doesn't only come herself. Fatimah comes with a pool of other agents.
A team of other agents.
Which can actually fully fulfill your needs, your property needs, right? And you can find her on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok.
Rumor lah Twitter
tak
sangat.
It's okay. You can find her at Agent Fat for TikTok and Instagram.
Fathimah Fakhruddin Properties for Instagram and Facebook, Agent Fat for TikTok, and also my number 82689136. You can call. Kalau tak suka call, you can WhatsApp and I will attend to your WhatsApp.
Yes, correct. Dia jaminkan kebahagiaan masa depan dalam
nampak?
segi perumahan.
Tak sia-sia. Okay, who do we have today?
So like I said, Haziq nyari tak ada. So but we do have a very special person with us today that will answer a lot of maybe my questions lah. Sebelum tadi dah kena marah sebab tanya banyak soalan.
Dia tanya banyak sangat. Habis nanti nak berbual apa?
Aduh. It's okay. We have Imran today, Mr. Imran himself. He is founder of Dialogue Center.
Dialogue Center.
Yes, so
okay, so maybe you can tell us a bit more about yourself and also the activities that you are involved in and what does Dialogue Center actually do for the community.
Sure. Assalamualaikum semua.
Waalaikumsalam.
So ni dalam bahasa Inggeris atau Melayu?
Boleh.
Nak buat Cina pun kita boleh try jawab.
So I'm founder of two organizations. These are non-profit. So the first one is Center for Interfaith Understanding. So I started that in 2019 actually to promote interfaith dialogues between people of different religions as well as even people with no religion also. So it's basically bringing people of different faith backgrounds or no faith background to talk about common issues that affect society. And we are an inclusive organization, so it doesn't matter where you come from, what's your background, as long as you are interested to discuss topics that can actually promote a better Singapore, then we welcome you into the space.
So it's not much of because normally kalau it falls under the umbrella of orang dengar the word faith, it's always about religion, you know.
I mean, to me, religion and faith are two distinct things lah.
Okay.
I mean, they're quite similar, but they're quite different also. Normally, when we talk about religion, it comes with the idea of institutions, establishment, more structures. But a lot of people also, they have their own personal way of believing. So we call that faith lah.
Yeah, there you go.
That's not something that we actually know. Kita selalu think that religion and faith is the same thing. So macam different religion means that
because it's correlated.
But certain faith is not as structured as you mentioned to conform into a religion lah.
And a lot of young people now, they are more experimental in terms of the kind of things that they believe because of their context and all that, right? So some may not want to subscribe to a kind of and impose ideas on religion.
Understand.
They have their own spiritual journey, you know.
So when you say experimental means that how they come about with it? Like macam mana they find that
well,
particular
for
faith?
many of us, mungkin kita, we grow up being told about what to believe, what not to believe, what to do, what not to do.
That's my mom right there actually.
And then ada syurga neraka kan. Kalau kau tak buat macam ini, kau
sekarang saya lah jadi macam itu.
But I think nowadays a lot of young people, they prefer to think on their own. They want to explore and examine their own beliefs.
Of course, yes.
Of course, there's pros and cons lah. But they are freer to actually find ways in which they connect with the religion themselves.
Understand. But they would have to have a certain baseline of what to believe in. Say whatever religion that they feel that they want to commit to, in a sense. They and however they feel that they want to experiment with it, they would need to have a certain level of
some guidelines. I mean, like how
it, right?
what they live by lah, or what they believe.
Well, it really depends on the individual lah. Some come from like deeply religious background, so they will connect back to what they've been taught from young and all that. But some others don't really grow up in a religious environment. So they will explore on their own. It's not inbuilt. But of course, there would be some who prefer to have guidance.
Of course.
So they will find the authorities, the teachers, in order to find out more.
Understand.
But others say that maybe I want to explore on my own, and then they form new identities. There's a lot of these things going on.
But new identities for themselves or what they believe in?
For themselves.
Oh, okay.
Of course, what they believe in.
Okay.
I mean, they may belong to the same religion, but within the same religion, you have people who have very different opinions on a lot of issues.
Of course. Yeah. Okay, so in your line of work, right? What do you normally like? How do you
conduct?
Yeah, how do you conduct?
Yeah, we encourage dialogue because there are a lot of differences that sometimes people want to talk about it, but they do not find that safe space for them to really engage on those issues. So we provide that safe space for people to come together and talk about their differences. But at the same time, also we teach certain tools of thinking or tools of engagement, so that the discussions over differences doesn't turn out to be doesn't become a conflict or cause friction and all that.
I understand.
Yeah.
So in this sort of matter, normally what are the kind of for the lack of the better word, conflicts lah that normally you have
sometimes
to in this day and age
people have very strong beliefs on certain issues.
Okay.
And they get upset if people question their beliefs.
That's true.
On whatever issues. Yeah. Or some people may approach an issue, by wanting to force others to believe the way they want to believe.
Hence, yeah.
So that's where the friction and the tensions come in. At the same time, also we not just have safe space, but we also have brave spaces. Brave spaces is brave
spaces. Okay.
Courage,
Yeah.
So we tell people, look, it's not just about you explaining your beliefs or your thinking or your ideas on certain issues. You must also be willing to examine your own beliefs.
Wow.
And see whether, when you hear new perspectives, you hear to what others have to say, it actually expands your mind and say, hey, I've never thought of it from that point of view.
Oh, yeah.
So
but you would have to want to know.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah. The curiosity must be there first.
Of course, yeah.
If people are not curious about things that are not familiar to them, then it's very difficult to start a dialogue even.
That's true.
Yeah.
So within that, meaning to say it's a safe space for people to share their different points of views on whatever the topic happens to be lah. But how do you actually teach people to stand on say on the fence lah? I would say like being able to agree to disagree, or like being able to like accept whatever differences that the both party has. How do you actually, is it possible to teach?
Well, that's where normally before every session, we will encourage people to agree to a common principle. We call it values commitment.
Okay.
So this is something that everyone has to agree right from the start. For example, right, what do you need to make this space safe for you? Right, so people will come up with various kinds of values that they think are necessary. For example, confidentiality, because some people will be sharing their deeply personal stories. And it's something that is not easy for them to share, and they wouldn't want that story to just float around outside the conversation, and then
of course.
they have to deal with certain issues, right? So everyone has to agree to what's their level of comfort in terms of how much of those stories people can share outside, or they want it to be strictly confidential, or maybe you can share the story but without naming them. So these are some values. Others would be like, can we listen deeply to what others have to say? Listening sometimes, it's easy to say, okay, we need to listen. But how we listen is also important.
That's true.
Sometimes we listen in order
just to dengar je.
To dengar so that we will find our own airtime, and then we are not interested in what the other person is saying. I'm interested in what I want to say. So you don't really listen,
to
right?
get your point across.
Yeah. So that's one. Secondly, there are people who listen in order to counter something. So they are not really listening to what the person is saying. They are just finding something,
A loophole
for them to later on challenge the person, right?
Okay.
So that's not really listening.
Okay.
Here we are saying that you listen deeply in order to develop empathy and try to understand the issue from that person's point of view without judgment.
Okay.
But without judgment also can be quite difficult, because you may say, okay, I withhold judgment, but in our minds, we judge, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but here we tell them, look, you can have your own opinion on things, but as much as you want others to say that you have the right to your opinion, you must also allow the same thing for that person,
That's true.
right? You cannot say only I have the right to think this way, then others cannot think their own ways. They have to agree with me. No.
Yeah.
So within that kind of space, we learn how to negotiate. We learn how to find common grounds. We learn how to be authentic in our own presentation of what we believe in. But at the same time, also we develop respect for the other person, because the other person is just like you. They have their own points of view
Beliefs. Yeah.
or beliefs, which may be different from yours.
Hence, yeah.
But we find a way to live with each other without, trying to force each other.
So my question is, because you have these safe spaces for these individuals, right? So by extension, how does these safe spaces help the community, who I'm sure by large, it's not only one person who have different beliefs and faiths. So how does these small or safe spaces by extension help the community into becoming more tolerant of each other?
Yeah, I think tolerance is quite a low bar.
Okay.
Sometimes we tolerate, until a point in time where we really cannot hold it back, and then
you
we
flip.
blow up, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
It's
so
more of acceptance. Is
yeah, we are saying, look, tolerance is the lowest bar.
Okay.
But from tolerance, what else is needed? It's actually acceptance. But some of the things we may not personally be able to accept.
Okay.
But how do we then deal with that? Because the problem is not the other person. The problem is within you,
Ooh.
right? That you are not able to allow the other person to do the things that they feel is important for them.
I have
Sakit
one topic that got into my head.
Okay. We talk about acceptance. Maybe even since tolerance is the lowest of the low in terms of what's the word for it?
Apa dia?
Okay, since tolerance is the lowest of the low.
Tolerance, then after that we move into understanding, right? Because you tolerate things that you don't understand normally.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
But once you have a curiosity to find out why the other person is doing this thing that is making you upset, right? Firstly, you have to learn how to control your emotions. When you see something that is different, you get upset. How do you deal with that internally, right?
Yeah.
So that has got to do with your own self. It's not the other person. Let's say the other person is doing some rituals that you feel apa ni, and you disagree with what the other person is doing. What do? Do you become angry at the other person? Hey, you shouldn't be doing this way.
Which is always the case.
Which
Always
is
the case,
a
right?
daily life lah, kira kan.
I mean, it could be simple thing, orang bakar.
Yeah, actually,
Wow.
Again, my mom is also another one of them.
Ini apa orang bakar-bakar habis masuk dalam rumah, then you get upset, right?
Yeah.
But if we are curious, we will want to understand why they are doing certain things.
That's true.
Because there are things that we do also other people don't understand. How do we want other people to understand what we are doing, right? So that requires communication. So we teach also how to communicate in a way that builds understanding.
Okay.
Right.
Then if that's the case, right? It's based on what you have seen in Singapore, right? How many percent of Singapore is on the tolerant level? How many percent of it's on acceptance level? How many people?
I don't have the statistics, tapi kalau rata-rata kita tengok kan, we are just barely tolerating each other lah.
Oh, wow.
Because you find a lot of cases where when people get upset, they don't want to resolve the issue themselves.
Yes, that's
First
true,
thing, call
actually.
police.
Correct. Yeah, why can't you
My
just
friend
talk to
is
each other?
in SPF. I shall not mention who. Dia kata benda call yang dia kena attend to semua kan. It's most of the time this kind of thing lah.
Yeah.
Macam my neighbor like this, my neighbor like that, blah 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 blah. So it's like it's very it's one of the things that like you mentioned now. One of everything call police dulu.
Call police.
And now maybe up one level lah. Instagram, TikTok,
then you take
videos.
video and then you post, and then people
Then
get
it causes a
outraged.
ruckus, you see.
Yeah.
Then it doesn't serve the community or the nation in any way, in any good purpose, you know.
Yeah, because sometimes when we just record and then we post it online, the context is lost also.
Betul? Because it's only a certain part of what happened. Kan? It's not the whole incident.
Correct. Social media, it's called framing kan. So you tak tahu kenapa orang tu behave that way. Mungkin dia ada some personal issues.
The context behind the whole
or maybe that person is going through some mental health issues. You don't know, right? So those kind of reactions actually don't help to build a more mature society lah.
Okay.
Yeah. So people need to be more reflective also and see.
Okay. If we were to talk about stereotypes, because this is what I feel in Singapore. Stereotypical stereotypes. The normal Singaporeans we like to stereotype like a certain
religion, faith,
face,
race.
religion, race. Into like particular
into a bigger
problem
issue.
It's a stigma lah to some extent, right? So say, I mean, maaf kata saya pun Melayu, so saya rasa saya boleh cakap. So when it comes to Malays, nanti it comes with drugs, it comes with all these irresponsibilities and malas and all this kind of thing.
When it comes to
China, it comes to their mouths and all these kind of things. I'm not saying all of them are like that. I'm just saying this is my observation. Right? And if we talk about religion, talk about Islam, and we talk about
Muslims are terrorists.
Terrorists, I think there's no point sugarcoating it lah. I mean, that's what's happening in the world even.
So my question is, when it comes to like such stereotypes, where do you think, or how do you think, based on your professional opinion lah, how do you think we can not settle, but like more of
firstly, I think there are different levels of the issue lah. So
you just tekan je.
Go ahead.
You just so basically more of like the most recent incident of younger ones who are actually radicalized. So I think that's the more pressing issue of how we manage that moving forward.
But before that, tadi belum habis kan conversation.
Actually, my topic wanted to diverge into that. But let's touch on this.
So stereotype kan. So there are different levels lah. Firstly, we have to understand where the stereotypes come from lah.
Okay.
But that's one aspect of it. The other aspect is how you encounter the stereotypes yourself.
Okay.
Right? Because stereotypes can be how we stereotype others. It can also be how we also sometimes believe their own stereotype, and then we internalize that stereotype.
Right.
And then there's a lot of problems that comes out of stereotyping.
It's like what you tell yourself, you are what you believe kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So kalau I feel like it is it's hereditary to a certain extent. Macam
it's self-fulfilling prophecy lah.
Like you are saying that you don't want to be as such, but people tell you're like that, and you start to like, oh yeah, I actually am like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I was a teacher once, so I observed a lot of that happening among some of my students. You know, they really believe that Melayu ni memang tak boleh achieve apa-apa lah, cannot make it, right? So kalau dorang fail pun, yelah, memang because saya Melayu. So that is internalized racism lah. Because it's based on the stereotype that Malays are lazy.
Means the racism things that you put onto yourself.
Betul.
Yes,
correct. Which eventually becomes
Kira macam kita dah macam percaya sangat lah. Because people say it of us so much that we also.
But where does the that kind of stereotypical racism comes from, right? Can comes from others who don't really have any contact with Malays, for example. So their source of information about Malays is what they hear around them, right?
Okay.
So they probably they might have a few Malay friends, but they don't really have that personal connection with their Malay friends. So they only believe what has been circulating around society.
Okay.
So they say, okay lah, Malays are supposed to be lazy. But when they encounter a different kind of Malay, then they will say, oh, ini lain.
Yes.
Yeah, you are different.
Malay maju lah, Melayu maju.
Are you actually Malay?
Are you actually Malay, or do you have
mixed
blood? Correct, right?
Betul. Yeah.
But that's the problem with racism itself. Yeah, because we do not challenge those stereotypes, right? And then sometimes Malays themselves who have made it will say, I'm a different kind of Malay.
Oh my God. I'm not. I can say this because I'm not all Malay. I'm half this, I'm half that.
So that happens. So there are so many layers of those kind of stereotypes that actually impact people. And it impacts people's life in real context. For example, when you want to apply for jobs, if at the back of the mind, the employer thinks that if I employ this Malay chap, he's going to be lazy, he's not going to be productive. Why would I employ that person, right? So it has impact in real life. So it's not just ideas that are circulating.
Okay, faham.
It affects people's lives.
Yeah. So then moving into religion pula. So we see how we say internalized ni semua kan. But how did radicalization of our religion, especially macam Muslim and all that, which is like the most pressing issue right now. How did that come about? Like how are they being groomed into believing that that is the version of Islam that they know, and those are the things that they have to do or take or partake in to be a true really a true Muslim,
True believer
a true believer. Yeah.
I mean, this whole issue of radicalization is quite complex lah. So there are different factors why people become radicalized, and these factors can be internal. That means their own personal background, their own personal life. That there are some issues within that. There's also the external factors like politics, the conflicts that are happening around the world. There are also other issues like, for example, how connected they are to certain communities that actually influence them or guide them or maybe push them in a certain direction. So there are a lot of factors going on. So let's take a look at individual factors first, right? So what we've seen from some of the cases that we've observed here is that a lot of the youngsters, the youths, for example, they become radicalized through the online space.
Right? I see
So that is quite clear in more recent times. The last few years, for example, right? So we have cases where the last one was 17 years old.
17,
very
So
young.
the age is getting younger.
Yeah.
So that's a worrying trend. One factor could be because, of course, social media plays a huge influence. But why are they attracted to those messages on social media? That is something we need to understand.
Okay.
Yeah. So it could be, for example, it could be the society that we are living in is so driven towards sense of wanting to make yourself into someone important, for example, right? You're always chasing for this affirmation, right? And if you don't get that affirmation, then you find that affirmation within other spaces where people would say you are someone, you are kau champion, kau bagus, kau take up this issue. So people wants to outdo themselves. So there's some kind of boredom. People are bored, boredom in general, because the life is so fast-paced. Sometimes people get tired easily. We have a specific term for that, alienation. So you are alienated from the world around you because things just don't make sense. And then when you read a lot of these conflicts that are happening, whether it's Palestine or in other parts of the world, a lot of these conflicts actually cause you to think, what's going on in the world? And you need meaning. You need some kind of answers. But they don't find that in spaces where people actually talk about these issues and are able to frame the issues in a way that makes sense for them. So they find other spaces to find meaning. And unfortunately, if they stumble across a space that's where propaganda or there are recruiters who are hanging around to influence them,
But sometimes
that's where the problem is.
But I mean, it's no
Apa dia?
shock to us. It's not news to us because we know where overseas where they claim or is said to be a lot of these extremists are in the Arab countries, Afghanistan, Pakistan, where we see a lot of when it's always redirected back to Islam in a sense. When it comes to extremism, we see a lot of young kids over there as well. So to me, I feel that it's not okay, but like it's nothing new to see kids over there becoming part of them per se. But in Singapore, it's not practiced, you see, because maybe for them maybe my dad is part of them, that's why I ikut sekali.
I think it's more to the medium that they have. They change probably because like so you see now social media, like you said, has become more prominent, right? So the younger ones are really pro social media, like TikTok, IG and all. So I think the medium that they use to recruit pun could have changed. Maybe dulu is more like websites. It's not very readily available, like people have to seek for it, like you mentioned. maybe I don't know. I'm just throwing a thought here. Did the medium change, or to a certain extent that they have recruiting even younger ones in like
of
around
course
the world?
there's attempt to recruit the younger ones because they are at an impressionable age, right? But let me get to the point you raised earlier. I don't think that these countries, the large majority are extremists. I don't think so. I think generally around the world, we have about 1.5 to at most 2 billion Muslims around the world.
Yes.
Large majority are peace-loving, moderate.
Of course. No doubt.
And they are not
I
extremists.
apologize if anybody took that off whatever.
No,
I'm so
faham.
sorry.
Yeah.
But
Of course, there are conflict situations that tend to push people towards violence.
Okay.
That is inevitable, right? For example, if you are being attacked, what do you do in that situation, right? So a lot of these conflicts are driven not by religion, by politics. But the way people respond to conflict, they need to use certain things that makes them feel that this is something worth fighting for. And that's where religion comes in to provide that kind of identity, but couched in a very extreme ways, right? So underneath all these things are actually the politics of it, but utilizing a lot of resources from religion in that struggle, in that fight. That's how religion becomes an ideology, a political ideology. So it's a very complex thing that we need to understand how conflict situations happen and what's going on in different parts of the world have different dynamics. So for example, Osama bin Laden, right, who founded Al-Qaeda, right? Yeah. What was he doing before the formation of Al-Qaeda? What radicalized him also, right? So there was he was part of the network that were helping the Mujahideen fight against the invasion of Soviet Russia in Afghanistan, right? So that's where he learned how to use arms and how to fight in insurgency wars and things like that. Yeah, but then what happened after that was several things that happened, like for example, invasion of Kuwait by Iraq, which then brought the American forces into Saudi Arabia and formed their bases around that. So he was very unhappy with that. Say, hey, I'm fighting a war in Afghanistan, and then you come in and well, not really invade, but you put all your troops and your military bases around. So he wasn't happy with that, and then he turned from one enemy to another enemy, and that's when he started utilizing the language of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict to mobilize other Muslims towards his political agenda of driving out the West or the US, right? Then, of course, there's also that situation in Bosnia, the Bosnian War, where a lot of Muslims were actually massacred. So that period actually radicalized a lot of youngsters who felt that Islam, right in the middle of Europe, is under attack. So it builds a certain perception around the world that the Muslims are under attack. We are under threat. And the terrorists know how to make use of these narratives to say, look, now we must fight against the West. We must fight against all these enemies of Islam. And
it's like we are one in a sense.
Yeah, because we are part of the Ummah. We
Yes,
protect each
correct.
other. We fight for each other, right?
Jihad lah. That's how they use the word.
That's how they use the word jihad. So there is a certain narrative that is happening because people don't normally understand the complexities of international relations or conflicts.
Correct,
and things
because
like
to
that.
laymen we won't understand that. Oh, there's this treaty that they need to adhere to.
There's this history of it and all that, right? All they know is it's a binary worldview. It's black and white.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, either you are with us, you're against us.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. So there's always an enemy, and then if you are not fighting the enemy, that means you are part of the enemy.
Correct.
Yep.
So it's this black and white vision of the world of fighting good versus evil, those kind of thing is very common amongst a lot of radicalized people. They see things in neat binaries.
Okay.
So that's the start of the problem when you start to think about issues in very binary terms.
Understand.
Right?
So back into Singapore context, then how in Singapore are they like controlling these? Because they know they are aware of this going on, right? How are they controlling this from getting out of hand, such that our young ones are not more and more getting influenced by all of this?
Well, there are many initiatives being done. Of course, there's the ones that are done at the government level. The government level, normally it's about monitoring, it's about surveillance, it's about ensuring that people don't cross that line and start to plan to engage in violence. That's when the Internal Security Act will come in and take you out in order for you not to pose a threat to society. But of course, they are not just isolated from the wider society, they are actually rehabilitated.
Okay.
So there is a team of asatiza.
Rehabilitated.
Rehabilitated, meaning to say they are not ostracized in a sense.
Well, there are people who are actually counseling them, right?
Okay,
so
understand.
because if
This
you just
is going to be
if you just take them out and put them in jail,
nothing
they
goes through.
might even become radicalized in jail. And that's what happens for example, in Europe, where a lot of youngsters who were in jail became radicalized inside the jail itself. So when they come out, they push even more radicalized, right? So I think we have gotten some systems right. For example, trying to rehabilitate them so that when they come out, they are able to reintegrate into society. Instead of leaving them out in the cold like that. It's the same way in which we try to deal with drug issues also. So that provide kind of support system.
Concept lah, in a sense.
And also their families are being helped also.
Oh.
Yeah. So there's like aftercare group, for example, because for example, if the head of the family is being detained, right? How is the wife and the children going to survive?
That's
right?
true.
So there is a special interagency group that actually look into how they can assist those families. Family members are being detained. So it's a kind of a comprehensive system that we have. Of course, there are ways in which we can improve it, but at least this is what is being done at the governmental level.
Understand.
But also at the level of civil society or at the grassroots level, we have a lot of community organizations that try to help in a way they go upstream. When someone has become radicalized, then you just have to isolate and make sure that person doesn't pose a threat. So that's downstream. But upstream is at the beginning, how do you actually ensure that people don't get attracted to radical ideologies? So that requires other kinds of work. For example, interfaith is one work where you actually bring people together to understand each other, because if they don't understand each other, they will see people of another religion as their enemy. So we have cases where, for example, Muslims, who views the Jews and the Christians as their enemies. But let's take Jews, for example. You have that case of that young person who wanted to stab Jews coming out of the synagogue, right?
Yes.
If you were to ask him, maybe he doesn't know any single Jew. He has never met a single Jew in his life. But he grew up with this idea that Jews are out to control the world. They are out to harm Muslims, right? But if they have met a Jew, they have interacted, they will find, hey, they are normal people like us.
You and me, only different beliefs.
This is how the white supremacists also view Muslims.
Whoa.
Right? It's the same thing.
We don't have a lot of
Yeah. Okay. We will continue on this. We will continue on this in the next episode.
All right.
Unfortunately, my boss has been winking an eye at me already.
This person.
Yes.
It's so intense.
Yes.
This is so good.
We'll continue about this
Sure.
white supremacy and how it has actually this concept of radicalization or these beliefs has actually affected us within our own country, and hence how rehabilitation will help, has helped or will help the people of our country also lah.
All right.
In the next episode.
This episode
This episode is sponsored by concentrate sangat, sorry.
Fathimah Fakhruddin Properties.
Yes.
Facebook and IG with Fathimah Fakhruddin Properties, and number with 82689136. You can call or WhatsApp.
Yes, please find our dear Fatimah and her team. They will help you with all your property needs. Okay, we'll see you next week on the next episode. See you, bye.
My name is Fatima. I'm from Fathimah Fakhruddin Properties. You can reach me at Facebook or Instagram at Fathimah Fakhruddin Properties. And for TikTok, I'm on Agent Fat. You can also call or WhatsApp me at 82689136. So today we want to talk about the new grants that has been released. I think you've read or seen it anywhere and everywhere on Instagram and social media. So let's just touch quickly on what are the new releases, and then I will go more on what are the actions that maybe you can take, to move forward. So as you know, the 4-room, they have increased the grant by 30,000. So it actually went up to 80,000. And for 5-room, they increased by 10,000 and it actually went up to 50,000. Right? So what happens there is you have more grants. So the total grant actually now is up to 190,000. So that is a lot of grant that can actually help the first timers. Especially if you've been trying BTO multiple times and you don't get your ballot numbers, or your ballot numbers are not promising. So this is the time for you to explore your options. You don't have to make the decision now, but sit down with me, we can calculate for you, and then we'll see if it's a wiser move to actually go ahead to the resale market. Because at the end of the day, the resale market, you don't have to wait for the build-up time. So you can get your house quite fast based on your urgency. So other than that, we have to also practice financial prudence. Even though the grant is bigger, we need to make sure that we are not committed to the accrued interest that will be imposed on the grants as well when it's being disbursed through your CPF. So that's one of the things that we have to also look at, financial prudence, and then we have to get the sustainability of you maintaining that, servicing that mortgage loan as you move forward when you have more of that grants to buy a bigger amount of the purchase price, right? So I mean, you're very excited about the grant, but that does not mean we use all the grant and buy a higher price house. So we also have to take a look in terms of that angle. So just give me a call and contact me, and I can actually sit down with you and go through all your options and also the whole process, especially the timeline, so you can see for yourself whether it fits the urgency that you have. Alright, so you can contact me at 82689136. Facebook and Instagram will be Fathimah Fakhrudin Properties, and TikTok will be Agent Fat. Thank you.